For years, I patched their roof and swallowed every quiet betrayal. Then they gave everything I built to my sister and called it fairness. You won't believe what happened when I finally stopped holding the roof up. Part 1. Hi, I'm Maura Ellison. I was the dependable one, the daughter who showed up, stayed quiet, paid the bills, and never asked for much. They said I was strong. They said I was stable. They said I understood. Until they gave my childhood home, to my sister Sienna, and didn't even bother to tell me. No warning, no conversation, just a cold, lifeless text message. We've finalized the will. Please keep handling the mortgage until things are settled. They didn't even ask. They just handed her everything, because she had it tough, because she needed stability, and because I was the strong one, the one who always understood. But what happens when the one who holds everyone else up decides to let it all fall? Before I share what came next, the choices I made, the truths I uncovered, I want to know where you're watching from. Please, hit subscribe and leave a comment with your city. Your stories, your voices, they matter. And if you've ever felt trapped in a love that turned into something else entirely, maybe my story will feel familiar. They threw her a housewarming party in my house, while I stood there like a guest, or maybe a stranger. Want to know how far they went to erase me? Sit back, I'll tell you. It started like any other quiet Thursday in Belridge. I was sitting in my parents' kitchen, at the same scratched-up oak dining table I'd sat at since I was 6. The old ceiling light above me buzzed and flickered, like it had for the past 5 years, and still, no one had replaced it. The table was a cluttered mess, prescription receipts, medical bills, unopened envelopes, stained coffee mugs, and one from Medicare addressed to my dad. I'd been helping them sort through this chaos for years, not because they ever asked, they never asked, but because I knew they couldn't handle it alone. I reached for a thick manila folder tucked under a pile of electricity and water bills. No label, no markings, just a plain folder with a quiet kind of weight. I opened it, and that's when I saw the title, Final Will and Testament. The words stared back at me, cold and heavy, like carved stone. The pages smelled old and dry, like something pulled out from the back of a safe. I hesitated, fingers hovering in the air. I hadn't known they'd finalized a will. They usually told me about big decisions like that. I flipped to the first page, then the second. By the third, my stomach dropped into my shoes. Everything, every asset, every dollar, the house, the savings, the insurance, was left to Sienna. My name appeared only once. Just one line. We trust our eldest daughter will understand. No inheritance. No explanation. Just understanding. I sat frozen, not crying, not shaking, but numb, and my mind, it started running, rifling through every memory that had dragged me to that exact spot at that exact moment. I remembered the year I passed on a career-changing promotion in Phoenix just so I could stay in Belridge when Dad had his hip surgery. I remembered wiring $11,000 from my own savings to cover the mortgage when they fell behind and were too ashamed to tell anyone. I remembered the night Mom called me and said, "You're the glue, Maura." Not all heroes wear capes. Some just wire money quietly. I laughed when she said it. It felt like a compliment back then, but now, it felt like a chain. The back door creaked open behind me, snapping me out of my thoughts. I quickly slid the will beneath a pile of papers. I couldn't even feel the pages in my hand anymore. I was on autopilot, scanning papers, pretending to help, because that's what I'd always done. I stood and walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water, anything to hold on to. Mom, Helen, was there, stirring a pot of chili, humming to some upbeat radio tune. She looked over and smiled warmly. "All done with the insurance stuff?" she asked cheerfully. I forced a breath and held up the folder. "I found something unexpected." She turned the stove down and dried her hands on a checkered dish towel. Her expression barely shifted, just a slight blink, maybe a sigh. "Sienna had a rougher time. You know that," she said, like I was being unreasonable for even asking. "She needs something steady. You're doing just fine, Maura. You always have." My father, Robert, walked in at that moment. He gave me a nod, glanced at the folder in my hand, and quickly looked away. "So you gave her everything?" I asked. My voice was low, not angry, just flat. "And you didn't think I deserved to be told?" Mom pressed her lips together. "We figured you'd understand." There it was again, the family anthem. Understand, accept, absorb. It's what I'd always done. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just nodded slowly, placed the folder on the kitchen counter, and walked outside. The late afternoon light had settled into that soft golden haze that only Texas evenings know. I sat on the porch swing, the one I paid to have rebuilt last year after it collapsed under Dad's weight. I remembered the handyman asking, "Your house?" And I replied, "No, my parents', but I pay the bills." I leaned back, listening to the same creak that trickled nearby my whole life, but it didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore. Maybe it never did. Inside, I could hear the faint sound of dishes clinking and voices murmuring. Maybe they thought I'd cool off. Maybe they thought I'd come back inside, smile, and pretend like none of it mattered. But I didn't move. I just stared past the porch railing into the nothingness. and then I whispered it, just loud enough for the wind to catch it. I'm always the one who understands. Until now. I stayed on that swing until the sky turned charcoal gray and the porch light flicked on automatically behind me. Like everything else in that house, still running on autopilot, I didn't go back in. I waited until I heard the last plate rinsed, the last word spoken. Then I slipped my keys into my purse and left. No goodbyes, no slamming doors, just gone. 2 days passed. Nothing, no call, no text, not even a half-hearted message to check on me. And honestly, I wasn't surprised. It's easier to keep using someone when you pretend they're unbreakable. That Monday morning, I was at my office on the 11th floor of a firm downtown. The windows stretched wide, offering a panoramic view of Belridge's heartbeat. But even with the skyline glittering outside, it all felt far away, like I wasn't truly part of any of it. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Mortgage came out higher this month. $20, $30 like always. Can you send it before Friday? No hello, no apology, no mention of the will. Just more numbers and more expectations. I stared at the message. Just numbers. Just need. Like that was all I was ever meant to be. Someone to fix what others break. I held my phone, thumb hovering over the reply button, but I didn't type anything. Not yes. Not no. That part of me, the fixer, the quiet hero, the ever-understanding daughter, it wasn't moving. So I set the phone down and went back to work. That Friday night was our weekly family dinner, some casual spot on South Lamar. Nothing fancy, just comfort food and the waiters who knew us too well. Sienna was already there when I arrived. Of course, she looked perfect. She always did. That soft, effortless beauty that seemed to follow her like a halo. She sat between Mom and Dad, laughing softly, fingers curled around a glass of iced tea like she was in a magazine ad. I sat down across from her. She gave me a small smile, polished, rehearsed. We ordered, talked about gas prices, laughed about the salsa being too spicy. Then, just before dessert, I leaned in and asked quietly, "When were you going to tell me about the will?" Sienna blinked. Her gaze dropped like I had just said something dirty. "I didn't know you saw that," she whispered. "I didn't even ask for the house, Maura. I swear, I feel awful." Her voice trembled, and her eyes glossed over. She dabbed them gently with her napkin like a scene from a sad movie, subtle to strangers, obvious to me. Mom reached across the table and clutched Sienna's hand. "She didn't ask for this, Maura. She's had such a rough few years. We just wanted her to have something solid under her feet." I looked to Dad. He kept chewing his enchilada, silent. Then he said, "Maura, she's just trying to survive. Don't make her feel worse." And just like that, the table turned. I was the villain now, the cold sister, the bitter one making things uncomfortable. No one mentioned the thousands of dollars I paid. No one remembered how I argued with insurance reps for hours to get Dad's prescriptions covered. No one acknowledged that new heating system last winter that I personally paid for. None of it mattered, because Sienna cried, and I didn't. And in our family, emotion always beat effort. I didn't yell, didn't argue. I excused myself, went to the restroom, not because I had to, but because I needed to breathe without their expectations tightening around my ribs. When I stepped back out, I didn't return to the table. I walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, let the engine hum beneath me, and then, for the first time in years, I opened my banking app, and just stared at it, not thinking of bills, not thinking of them, just thinking, what if I stopped being the glue? What if I let it all fall? Part 2. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and scrolled to the autopay section. There it was, like always, the mortgage transfer scheduled for the next morning. The amount I'd been sending without fail, month after month, as if this house were my personal responsibility. My finger hovered above the toggle switch. I didn't hit cancel. Not yet. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone who was going to keep saying yes. Something inside me didn't snap, not loudly, anyway, but it stopped. And sometimes, the quietest breaking is the most dangerous of all. I left the payment alone that night. I could have canceled it. I should have. I wanted to, but I didn't. Instead, I drove home in silence. No music, no calls, just the hum of the car, the click of the turn signal, and the hollow rhythm of traffic lights flicking from red to green. The static of a forgotten radio station filled the silence, but nothing filled the space inside me, where outrage should have lived. By the time I parked in my space and climbed the 3 flights up to my apartment, a tired ache had settled in my bones. I dropped my keys into the ceramic bowl by the door, louder than necessary. It cracked against the edge. I didn't care. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't even take off my shoes. I walked straight to the file cabinet tucked in the corner of my living room. The one I always meant to organize but never did, because life didn't give me that kind of time. I yanked open the bottom drawer, and the familiar smell of paper and time rose to greet me. I dug through years of records like I was searching for proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Old tax returns, donation receipts, birthday cards I never had the heart to throw away, faded documents, forgotten corners of my life. Near the back, wedged between a refrigerator warranty and outdated W-2s, was a small, dusty blue shoebox, one I hadn't opened in years. I lifted the lid. It creaked like an old door that remembered too much. Inside, scattered pieces of a younger me. Photos from college, me and Sienna laughing on a dorm rooftop. A pressed, dried flower from her very first piano recital. A movie ticket from the night Dad finally left the hospital. And on top of it all, a single envelope, faded, but familiar. My name was written across the front in my mother's neat, looping cursive. Too tall, too perfect. I knew it anywhere. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it, unsure. Seeing that handwriting was like spotting an old friend across a crowded street, one who used to know you, but probably wouldn't recognize you now. The letter was dated 7 years ago. I didn't need to check. I remembered that week like it lived under my skin. The hailstorm had torn through the roof of the house, ripped it to shreds. They didn't have insurance that covered it, so I wired nearly $8,000 from my savings, without being asked. I unfolded the letter. Her voice echoed from the paper. I don't know where this family would be without you, Maura. You never complain. You just do. You've always been the one who steps up before we even ask. I hope you know how much that means to us. You're the strongest thread in this home. I read it once, then again, just to be sure. That version of my mother, the one who saw me, who wrote us like I belonged, she wasn't the same woman who signed away my place in the will. She wasn't the one who texted me like I was a credit card with a birth certificate. This woman? She saw me. The current one? She saw only what I could do. I sat down on the living room floor, cross-legged, with the letter in my lap. It felt heavier than paper had any right to feel. The room was quiet, too quiet, but I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. What I felt didn't have a name. It was like grief, but not for a person, for a version of love I thought had been real. For the girl I used to be, the one who believed that love was earned through reliability, that being needed meant being valued, that if I just kept showing up, kept fixing, kept sacrificing, one day someone would look at me and say, "We see you, not just what you do for us, but you." But this letter wasn't love. It was praise. And praise turns bitter fast when people think they're entitled to it. I leaned my head back against the file cabinet and let out a breath. Slow, controlled. Then, I picked up the pen I usually use to sign rent checks. I flipped the letter over, and in large block letters on the back, I wrote, "I'm done," not out of spite, not to shock them, just because I needed to see it written somewhere other than my own exhausted heart. I didn't feel lighter after writing it. This wasn't some Hollywood moment, no sweeping relief, no empowering background score, but still, I folded the letter, slipped it back in the envelope, and placed it inside the box, alongside everything else that once felt like proof I mattered. Then I slid the box back into the drawer and stood up, not lighter, but straighter, because sometimes endings don't come with slammed doors or tearful confrontations. Sometimes, they arrive quietly on your apartment floor while the city outside hums along like nothing's changed. But something had changed. Even if no one else noticed, I did. Saturday morning arrived in its usual soft way. Light slipped through the blinds. The coffee pot hissed and sighed. My apartment was finally still after a restless night. I sat cross-legged on the couch, holding a cup of lukewarm dark roast and trying to calm the thoughts pacing in my head. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone, so I did what most people do when they're avoiding life. I opened Facebook, scrolled, let the noise wash over me like static, and there it was, top of the feed, a post from my parents' account. Sometimes giving your all still isn't enough, but we gave it anyway, to both our daughters, even when one forgets. Below it, a photo, my parents and Sienna, sitting on the porch swing, the same one I paid to rebuild. The same swing I sat on, alone, 2 nights earlier while they acted like I didn't exist. Sienna's head leaned gently on Mom's shoulder, Dad's arm around them both. A golden filter added warmth, like a memory, like something you'd stop to admire, maybe even feel something for. It was a beautiful picture, and it was a lie. I didn't comment, didn't react, just stared at it until the coffee in my hands went cold, until my chest started tightening with something I didn't want to name. By noon, my phone started ringing. First, Aunt Lila, then Cousin Dean, then Uncle Ray. Each voicemail said the same thing, wrapped in different tones. Sweetheart, what's going on? Your parents are hurt. They said you've distanced yourself. Your mom was in tears last week. Not one mentioned the will. Not one asked if I was okay. None of them knew I'd been covering mortgage payments, insurance deductibles, fixing leaks, skipping opportunities, staying close like an unpaid emergency fund. All they knew was the post, and to them, that was enough. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how easily they rewrote the story. How seamlessly people who had known me since childhood accepted the version that painted me as the daughter who forgot. Forgot. That word rang in my ears. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't post a reply or write a long explanation. Instead, I opened my notes app. Not to justify, not to argue, but to remember. I began writing everything. The dates I wired money, the weekends I drove them to appointments, the amount I paid for their prescription plan, photos of receipts, quotes from emails, screenshots of texts, all saved in a folder called Family Per Bills. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. Just so the next time someone asked me, "Why are you pulling away?" I'd have something to hold on to. I scrolled to the top and typed a title. If they get to write the story, then I get to write mine. My phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from a family friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Saw your mom's post. Hope you two are okay. Family is everything. I stared at that message for a long time. Family is everything. People say that when they've never had to choose between being included and being used. When their version of family is Sunday dinners and birthday cards, not silent expectations and quiet erasure. I didn't reply. I closed the note, plugged in my phone, took one last sip of cold coffee and poured the rest down the sink. No tears, no tantrums, just quiet clarity. If I didn't hold on to the truth, no one else would. Later that afternoon, a plain envelope slid through my mail slot. No note, no signature, just a check, an amount, no explanation, no apology, not even the decency of a sticky note with a thank you. I didn't rip it up. I didn't cash it either. I slid it into a drawer and walked away, the same way I had begun walking away from all of them. The next day, I stopped by the house, not because I missed it. I had to grab some maintenance receipts I left in the kitchen drawer. That's when I saw the truck. Sienna's hatchback was parked in the driveway, trunk wide open, boxes stacked high. A moving van idled at the curb, halfway unloaded. Two men carried a dresser up the front steps. Sienna stood on the porch, directing traffic like she'd been born to it. "Put those in the main bedroom," she said, "and the curtains go in first. That's my sanctuary now." And just like that, it was done. It was her house, her sanctuary, built on my silence. Part 3. "Make sure the curtains go in first," Sienna called out to the movers. "That's my sanctuary now, my sanctuary." The words hit me like a slap across the chest. I was parked across the street, hidden behind the glare of my windshield. Maybe she didn't see me. Maybe she did, and just didn't care. Either way, there was no call, no warning, not even a fake, "Hey, hope this is okay." Just her, staking claim to what wasn't hers. Not really, not yet. Not while I was still the one paying for the roof over her head. It was one thing to read about it in a will. It was another to see her in real time, organizing furniture, issuing orders, walking through the front door like it had always been hers. She wasn't visiting, she was claiming, and in that moment, it felt like I was the intruder. Like the person who kept this whole house from collapsing didn't even belong there anymore. I didn't get out of the car, just gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Then I backed out of the spot, turned the corner, and drove away, unseen. Or at least that's what I told myself. 2 days later, an email from Mom popped into my inbox. Subject: Revised financial plan. Please review. Attached, updated_medical_budget.pdf. I clicked it open, expecting some new estimates, maybe changes to Dad's physical therapy costs. Instead, I saw my own spreadsheet. The same one I had created 6 months ago, when Dad's therapy bills doubled overnight. Every column, every formula, even the muted green header row, identical. The same formatting, the same order of expenses, even the footnote structure. Only one thing was different. Prepared by Sienna Ellison. I stared at the screen, blinking, hoping the numbers would rearrange themselves into a joke I could laugh at. They didn't. I called Mom immediately. She answered after the first ring, like she'd been expecting it. "Do you realize that plan is mine?" I asked. My voice wasn't sharp, but it had lost every ounce of softness. A pause. Then, "Sienna's trying, honey. She's not as detail-oriented as you. Just let her have this one. It'll boost her confidence. Let her take credit for my work, because it made her feel better. She's doing her best," she added. I didn't say anything else. I just hung up, not out of rage, not out of rudeness, but because I knew the walls of that house had never echoed my voice, no matter how loud or quiet it was. That night, I sat down at my laptop, drafted a message, No emotions, just facts. Subject, documentation. Body, this will be the last time I stay silent. I've covered the mortgage, the repairs, the hospital fees. If anything I've created, paid for, or contributed to is repackaged under another name again, I will consider it misrepresentation. This is not a threat. This is documentation. I attached the original spreadsheet, dated, watermarked, then clicked send, closed the laptop, walked away. There was no response that night, none the next morning either, but by noon, I found another envelope in my mailbox, hand-delivered, no return address. Inside, another check, blank, and signed. A check that said more than any apology could. It said, "We still expect you to fix this." It said, "We know we're crossing a line, but we'd rather throw money than face what we've done." It said, "You don't get to decide anymore, but we still expect you to pay for the consequences." I didn't cry, I didn't rant. I folded the check and filed it beside the first one. Then, I opened a new document on my computer. Title, Evidence of Absence. Because if they were going to rewrite history to erase me, I'd keep my own record. For me, I didn't type anything that night, just stared at the blinking cursor, like it was daring me to tell the truth. To stop pretending I hadn't held this family together for years while they handed credit to someone else. The next afternoon, around 3:15, I was at the pharmacy drive-thru, picking up Dad's prescriptions. Still under my account, still under my name. My phone rang. It was Mom. I almost let it go to voicemail, but old habits die hard. "Hey, sweetheart." Her voice was far too cheerful, like she was trying to sing through a storm. "Sienna's thinking of leasing a car. Nothing fancy, just something to help her get to job interviews. You know how hard it is these days." I said nothing. The silence didn't stop her. "She'd like to lease through the credit union, but they want a co-signer. She asked me if maybe you'd." There it was. Another request. Another assumption that I'd step in without hesitation. "She just needs your name," Mom continued. "It won't affect your credit score. You're not really responsible. It's just for the application. You're the most stable one out of all of us." Stable, their favorite word for "you're the one we can keep using." I took a breath. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You want me to co-sign a loan for the sister who just moved into the house I've been paying for, using my financial plan, with her name on it?" Silence. Then, "Maura, don't make this about the house. We all help in different ways. You're good with numbers. Sienna has people skills." I didn't laugh, but I let out something close. A bitter, breathless sound. "Tell her to ask someone else. I'm not doing this." Before she could respond, I ended the call and pulled forward to get the medication. I didn't even bother asking if I'd be reimbursed. I already knew the answer. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I ignored it. 30 minutes later, it rang again. I picked up. "Miss Rivers?" a voice asked. "Yes? This is Kathy from Lone Oak Federal. We're reaching out regarding a joint account that recently went into overdraft. Your name is still listed as an authorized account holder." My heart dropped. "What account?" She gave the number. I barely recognized it. It was an old account, one I'd opened a decade ago to help Mom and Dad consolidate bills during a tough stretch. We never closed it. I assumed it had faded into the past. Apparently not. "There was a transaction last week," she said. "A payment to Lone Star Imaging for $4,126. Medical charges. Not mine." "I never authorized that," I said. "I understand, ma'am," she said, "but since your name is on the account, you remain liable unless formally removed." I ended the call, drove straight to the nearest branch near my office, and demanded immediate closure. 40 minutes later, I walked out, untethered. Finally, that night, I sent one last email. Attached, a notarized letter, signed, scanned, sealed. Subject, formal notice. Body, effective immediately. I withdraw from any and all financial associations, formal or informal, related to Robert Rivers, Helen Rivers, or Sienna Ellison. This includes but is not limited to banking institutions, utility accounts, property deeds, vehicle titles, credit arrangements, insurance policies, medical or health coverage. Do not use my name. Do not forward me bills. Do not assume consent or connection. This is not a request. This is a boundary. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't need one. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my small balcony, let the breeze slip through my sweater. The silence? It used to feel heavy. Now it felt earned. Until my phone buzzed. A message from Sienna. That was dramatic. SIS. No punctuation. No apology. Just a brush-off disguised as banter. I stared at it. 5 words. That was all she had. I didn't reply. Because if setting boundaries makes me dramatic, maybe I should have started performing a long time ago. The message clung to me like static all weekend. By Saturday afternoon, I needed out. I threw on a light sweater, grabbed my keys, and drove to the grocery store. I didn't need anything, just wanted to wander, breathe. But fate has a way of cornering you in aisle Mile 6. Near checkout, I ran into Mrs. Caldwell, our childhood neighbor. "Oh, Maura," she said brightly. "You didn't make it to the housewarming, huh?" I froze. My face must have given me away, because she added quickly, "Oh honey, it was lovely. Sienna had a whole slideshow. Your parents were glowing. There were pictures of the backyard, after you redid it. That swing set turned out beautiful." I smiled, nodded, pretended none of it stung, paid for a single pint of blueberries I hadn't meant to buy. Back in my car, I sat in silence. Air conditioner humming stale air. Housewarming. They threw a party in the house I was still paying off. No call, no invite, not even a passive-aggressive group text. Just exclusion by omission. When I got home, I opened social feed and searched the event. There it was. Photos, tags, heart emojis, comments from people I barely remembered. "You're such a blessing to Sienna. Your parents must be so proud. This girl right here is holding it all down." Not one mention of me, not one acknowledgement. I scrolled until I saw the porch. My porch, the one I rebuilt, the one I stained with my own hands while Dad stayed inside complaining about the draft. There was Sienna, smiling in front of a potted fern I picked out, looking like she had always belonged there. Part 4. The stain had barely dried the evening I brushed that porch with careful hands, the same porch where my father once sat, grumbling about the draft sneaking in through the screen door. I remembered the hum of cicadas in the air, the way the paint clung to the grain, how I'd worked past sunset to make sure it looked just right. And now? There she was, Deline, posing on that very porch like she'd built it herself. She leaned beside the potted fern I had picked out one spring morning, smiling as if this had always been her domain. And then came the moment that told me they hadn't just removed me, they'd replaced me. Sunday morning. A buzz on my phone jolted me awake, not from rest but from the weight of whatever they'd erased next. A local news tag, from one of those human interest columns they used to soften the harshness of the world. The headline read, "Youngest daughter sacrifices to keep family together through health struggles." The words blinked back at me like a joke. There she was again, Deline, her face beaming beneath that soft golden filter they love using to sell redemption. The article told a story I barely recognized, about how Deline moved back home to care for her aging parents, how she stepped up during trying times, managed responsibilities, brought relief to a struggling household. There were quotes from Mom, even from Dad, sentences polished with admiration, words like grace, strength, and devotion wrapped around her name like some sacred halo. Not one word about the woman who paid their health premiums. Not a single sentence about the late-night calls I made to fight with insurance reps. Not even a footnote about how the mortgage, yes, the one still tied to my account, had been auto-drafted monthly for the last 7 years without a single missed payment. They hadn't just excluded me, they'd rewritten the script entirely. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I laughed, once. A short, bitter sound. Not because anything was funny, but because sometimes truth breaks the surface as laughter when the screen can't find its voice. I walked over to my desk and opened the digital folder I'd been curating for weeks, my archive. Every wire transfer, every tax receipt, the timestamps on repair invoices, delivery slips, pharmacy pickups. I opened a second tab, drafted an email, and attached the document. I addressed it to Mr. Henry Talbot, the same family attorney who once handled Dad's pension setup. I BCC'd my accountant, and just for good measure, I added myself to the CC line. Subject line, estate discrepancy, records attached. Body, for documentation purposes only. Please keep this on file for future reference. No further action required at this time. I didn't send it to retaliate. I sent it because truth deserves a witness. If they wanted to pretend I never existed, then I needed something beyond my private folders, a record that bore my name. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I stepped out onto my balcony with a glass of water. The city buzzed softly below, dog walkers crossing at red lights, a delivery guy biking with one hand on the handlebars and the other on his phone. My phone buzzed once. Another message. "Feeling petty now?" From Deline. 5 words. That's all. As if truth-telling made me a villain. As if standing up for myself was some form of treason. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I glanced at the soft orange on the horizon and whispered, just to myself, if truth makes me petty, then I'll wear that crown. The next morning was gray, the kind of sky that can't decide if it wants to cry or just sulk. I opened the windows to let the air in, but not the light. I wasn't in the mood for brightness. Her message still sat in my notifications like a smug guest I never invited. "You're being dramatic. This isn't wasn't a courtroom, Mora, maybe not a courtroom, but the truth? It still deserved to be recorded, even if no one would care to read it. I opened my laptop and compiled a new bundle of documents. The full mortgage history, every withdrawal from my account, organized by year. The scanned copy of the original will, the one drafted before Deline came sweeping in like a prodigal saint. I addressed the email again to the attorney, CC'd my legal advisor, and included the local notary who had stamped the revision. Subject line, let the record show. No drama, no poetic vengeance, just facts. I hit send. The screen refreshed. My chest didn't lighten, but I felt anchored. 2 hours passed. Silence. No call. No apology. No explanation. Eventually, a text popped up, just a vague ripple. Gordon Rivers, why'd you do that? I didn't reply. My phone rang. Laureen Rivers. Declined. Then again. Gordon Rivers. Declined. Then a call from a blocked number. I didn't need a name to guess who that was. I let it ring. Then I turned on airplane mode. It was the first moment in years where I didn't feel like I owed anyone a reply. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The next morning, I made a decision. I dressed in neutral layers, grabbed a folder from the kitchen table, and drove to a small legal office on the north side of town. Nothing flashy. 2 offices. 1 reception desk, a flickering coffee machine humming in the corner. The receptionist looked up, recognized my name. I'd been listed on too many documents over the years. I signed a severance form. Legally, emotionally, financially, I was out. It took less than 25 minutes. I kept the signed copy in my purse, not out of fear, just as proof. On my way home, I drove by the old house, not to visit, not to say goodbye, just to return what was never truly mine. I walked up the gravel path. The mailbox creaked slightly as I opened it and dropped the house key inside. No note, no goodbye, just the cold click of metal as it landed. Done. I didn't wait to see if anyone watched from the windows. I didn't glance at the porch or the flower beds I once replanted every spring. I turned around, got into my car, and drove off. That night, rain came, soft and steady. It streaked down my window as the headlights from passing cars blurred into hazy orbs. I checked my phone. No new messages from them, but curiosity nudged me. I opened the county real estate listings. There it was. 2647, Springdale Avenue. Single-family home. Updated porch. Charming. Great bones. The photo? That same porch swing I rebuilt. The one Deline posed on for her New Beginnings post. The porch light was off, but the weight was off me too. 2 weeks later, I passed by the house again, unplanned, a coincidence really. I had just finished leading a workshop at the community college, budgeting basics for retirees. The room was filled with nods and laughter. One man whispered as he left, I wish someone taught me this before my wife passed. I took the long way home, habit more than intention. There it was. 2647 Springdale. Overgrown lawn. Tilted for sale sign. Windows sealed tight. No cars. No voices. No Deline. I didn't stop. Just slowed enough to really look. Not with anger. Not even nostalgia. Just perspective. That night, after a simple dinner, I returned to my modest rental. 2 bedrooms. 1 mismatched set of dishes. A fence just high enough to keep the noise out. In the mailbox, a single cream envelope with no return address. Inside, a letter. My mother's handwriting. Too neat. Too careful. I should have protected you too. I saw what you carried and mistook your silence for indifference. You were never invisible, Mora. I just didn't look hard enough. No signature. No plea. Just a sliver of truth cracked open too late. I didn't cry. I didn't rush to respond. I placed it next to the other letter, the one from years ago where she called me the thread that held everything together. Funny how the same hand wrote both, yet they lived on opposite sides of the truth. I didn't frame them, but I didn't throw them away either. Healing isn't pretending it didn't hurt. It's choosing not to bleed from the same wound again. These days, my life is smaller, quieter, but it's mine. I teach part-time, bake on Sundays, volunteer on Wednesdays. When my phone rings, I don't flinch. I remember birthdays, but I don't call. I don't block anyone, but I don't answer either. Some silences speak loud enough. I'm not bitter, not broken, just free. That evening, standing by my kitchen window with a glass of water in hand, I whispered into the soft air. I wasn't the one who left. I was the one who stopped holding the roof up. Sometimes walking away isn't abandonment, it's survival. And if you've ever been the one holding everything together while others lived like the house was theirs, let me be the one to tell you, it's okay to stop. It's okay to let go. It's okay to be done, even if they never understand why. Before I share what came next, the choices I made, the truths I uncovered, I want to know where you're watching from. Please, hit subscribe and leave a comment with your city. Your stories, your voices, they matter. And if you've ever felt trapped in a love that turned into something else entirely, maybe my story will feel familiar.